We're about to dive into something that's maybe one of the most unsettling, but also one of the most fundamental parts of being human. And that's the performance of self. We're going to talk all about the mask that we all wear, why we wear it, and the real danger of forgetting it's a mask in the first place. Just let that sink in for a second. I mean, there's a version of you in your parents' minds, there's a totally different one for your friends, another for your colleagues, and then there's the one you project online. But when you're all alone in the quiet, which one is the real one? Which one is actually you? That's the question we're going to unpack. It's such a weird, universal feeling, isn't it? One second, you're just walking, and the next, you're performing the act of walking. Suddenly, you're hyper-aware of everything, of your own body. Because the second you know you're being perceived, you switch from just being to being an object that can be judged. Well, that feeling, that sudden jolt of self-consciousness, it actually has a name. It's a core idea in sociology called the looking glass self, and it basically explains the whole mechanism behind why that simple act of being watched changes us so deeply. What this really means is that we use other people as mirrors. It's kind of wild, but we don't have a direct way of understanding who we are, so we're always looking for our reflection in how they react to us. The problem, of course, is that we're not looking into a perfect mirror. It's one that's totally warped by our own fears and what we think they're thinking. And this whole thing happens in a 3-step loop that's just running constantly in the background. First, we picture how we must look to someone else. Then, we imagine what they're thinking about us, their judgment. And finally, the craziest part, we feel pride or shame based on a judgment that exists only in our own head. Okay, so this idea of a performed self was taken even further by the psychoanalyst Carl Jung. He gave us these two really powerful concepts to help us get our heads around this split inside of us, the persona and the shadow. So this contrast is absolutely crucial. Think of the persona as your public relations manager. It's the polite, capable, agreeable you that helps you get through life, land a job, make friends. The shadow, though, that's everything else. Everything we've decided is unacceptable. Our insecurities, our selfish thoughts, our ugly truths. It's the stuff we often don't even want to admit to ourselves. And this quote just nails the why. We build this persona because we crave a stable, predictable identity. We want to show the world this pristine sculpture of ourselves, one that's easy to understand and, more importantly, easy to like. But, this is where it gets dangerous. What happens when the performance is so constant, so convincing, that you actually forget you're even wearing a mask? What happens when you start to believe your own PR? Okay, let's look at this case study. Let's call him Tyler. He moves to a new city, and right away he adopts the corporate nightlife persona to fit in with his new coworkers. When that, predictably, burns him out, he swings to the complete opposite extreme, a grueling fitness identity, totally obsessed with data and control. And finally, he just isolates himself in monk mode careerism. You see the pattern, right? He's not choosing these lives. He's downloading social scripts that look like something he should be doing. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, he had a term for this. He called it bad faith. And it's basically the act of pretending you aren't free. It's when we convince ourselves that we have to be the good employee or the perfect partner, because that's so much easier than facing the terrifying freedom and responsibility of actually choosing who we are from moment to moment. And this brings us to one of Sartre's most famous and maybe most misunderstood quotes. When he said, "Hell is other people," he didn't just mean that people can be annoying. No, he meant something way deeper. Hell is that state of being permanently trapped by the gaze of other people. It's that feeling of being an object in someone else's reality, your entire identity held hostage by their judgment. We get so busy managing how they see us that we completely lose track of ourselves. We're trapped in the looking glass. So, how do we get out? How do we stop performing? Well, the answer isn't to just rip the mask off and reveal some true, solid self that's been hiding underneath. The path to authenticity is actually way more subtle than that, and it starts with just 2 little words. Yeah, the answer is in adding these 2 simple words, for now. Just think about the power in that. This is the job that makes sense for me for now. This is who I am for now. See? Adding those words just transforms a rigid identity into a temporary state. It's like a release valve. It gives you permission to evolve, to change, to be a work in progress instead of some finished statue. This is the fundamental shift right here. It's about letting go of that impossible goal of being a solid, consistent sculpture for other people to look at. And instead, we can just embrace the reality of what we are, a patchwork of moods, a restless procession of internal weather. We aren't a fixed thing, we are a process. We are always becoming. So, in the end, authenticity isn't some destination you finally arrive at. It's not the real you that you uncover after digging through all the layers. It's simply a state of awareness. It's the ongoing practice of just noticing the masks you wear without judging yourself for wearing them, and remembering that you always have the freedom to change them. Maybe the most heroic thing any of us can do is just to stop demanding a simple answer to the question, who am I? And instead just marvel at the fact that we can even ask that question at all. You're not a brand to be managed. You are a miraculous, profound, and ever-changing display of consciousness. Because once you really embrace the messy, contradictory, beautiful reality of your own awareness, you realize that any fixed mask you try to perform is just incredibly limiting. I mean, really, what performance could possibly be more interesting than that?